Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Chris. I've been in the IT field for over 20 years, and today we're going to be taking a look at Fedora CoreOS. So what I've got here is on the left side of the screen is the host PC, and on the right side of the screen is going to be our CoreOS Install. And we're going to run through the process of generating RSA SSH keys. We're going to generate our YAML Butane file. We're going to convert that Butane file into an ignition file that the CoreOS install requires. Then we're going to locally share the ignition file with the CoreOS install. We're going to install Fedora CoreOS. We're going to layer in the firewall through rpm-ostree. Then we're going to set up the firewall rules and DNS. And then we'll set up Pi-hole for network level ad blocking. But you can use CoreOS for, whatever your use case is. Speaking about learning new things, let me tell you about today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Brilliant, an awesome online learning platform that makes subjects engaging and interactive. Whether you're looking to boost your math skills, dive into computer science, or explore fascinating science topics, Brilliant's got you covered. Their bite-sized lessons and hand-on approach make learning fun and interactive. Brilliant helps build your critical thinking skills through problem solving, not memorization. So while you're building real knowledge on specific topics, you'll also becoming a better thinker. Brilliant recently launched a ton of new data science content, all of which uses real-world data to train you to see trends and make better informed decisions. This is perfect for learners of any level to start learning data analytics with a full suite of new content covering data visualizations, algorithms, regression models, and more. So if you're ready to level up your learning, please visit brilliant.org/thelinuxitguy or scan the QR code to start your 30-day free trial and to get 20% off your premium annual subscription. Okay, and on the CoreOS side, I've gone ahead and gone to the Fedora website and downloaded that CoreOS bare metal ISO. Let me show you that real quick. So just go to the website, scroll down, and it's at the bottom here, download now. And I went with stable, show downloads. And we want this CoreOS, the bare metal CoreOS live DVD. So I've gone ahead and downloaded that, put it on an ISO, and we've booted up to it. And now it's sitting there ready for us to install, right? So before we do that, we need an ignition file. So there are some steps we need to take to generate that. So what I'll do is I'll bring up the terminal here, and the command to generate our SSH keys, I've typed it in here, SSH keygen -t RSA -b 2048-f /.ssh ID _RSA. It's going to prompt you to enter a passphrase as well. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it empty, so I'm just going to press enter. Enter again. And as you can see, it's built out our RSA SSH keys for us. So we're not going to do anything with that now. I can show you real quick where it's at. I had to go and show hidden files to be able to see this .ssh. But there's the two files it just generated. We'll keep that minimized for now, and we'll go to the next step. Okay, the next step is to create our Butane YAML file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Home, Downloads. I'm going to right click, Create New Folder, and we're just going to put all of our stuff inside this CoreOS folder, just to keep it nice and tidy. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up, is Kate installed? No, we'll do Kate Writer. We'll use the K-Write. Let's do New File. And this is where we're going to create that Butane YAML file. So we're just going to do variant Fedora CoreOS. We want version 1.3.0. Password. We're going to do space users. space, name, core. And core is the default account for Fedora CoreOS. SSH underscore authorized keys SSH RSA, and this is where we want to paste in our public key. So we're going to go back into home SSH, and you want to go into this .pub, and we want to view it with kwrite. And we just want to copy this piece. You can copy it all if you want to overwrite the SSH. Go back in here, and we just want to overwrite everything. We'll just paste it in there and hit save. It's going to prompt us. We want to put it in that CoreOS inside of our downloads. And we're going to name this guy config.bu for butane. Save that. And I just want to make sure that it did create it. Config.bu. And it's got everything that we just typed in. Perfect. We've created our butane YAML file. So that butane YAML file is something that we can read. Now we need to convert that into the ignition file that the CoreOS installer can read. So to do that, we're going to use Podman. So we're going to cd into downloads. And into our CoreOS, where we just created the butane file. And we can see it's there, config.bu. And we're going to run podman, run. This is important. The spaces need to be there for this file to work. And we want our config.bu with the space. So it's going to be arrow space file name space closing arrow. And then what do we want to name the ignition file? I'm going to name it CoreOS.ign. IGN stands for ignition. Podman's going to go out, it's going to grab the butane container, it's going to download it, and then it'll run our command for us. And it's finished, so we'll go back into our downloads folder, and you can see we've now got a CoreOS.ignition file. We go into that, and you can see how, it's not very easy to read now that it's taken it from the YAML. Easy to read for a human and convert it into the ignition file. Easy to read for the CoreOS installer. So that is there now. It's perfect. The install command for CoreOS requires an ignition URL. So to do that, we're basically going to set up the folder, the CoreOS folder. We're going to set up the contents in there. We're going to web host that. We'll have a URL we can point to our host PC to download the CoreOS ignition file. So let's go ahead and do that. And to find the IP address of our host machine, we're going to type in IP address or IP ADDR, and we get that IP address here. So it's 192.168.122.243. So keep that in mind. In the next step, we're going to have to disable the firewall during this install process. If you know how to configure your firewall and you just want to open port 8000, which is the port we'll be using to share the file, you could do that instead. But this is just a quick and easy way to do it as a beginner. So we're just going to type in sudo systemctl stop firewall d service. And you'll have to type in your password there to confirm that. And then to make sure that it was turned off, we can do status. So sudo systemctl status firewall d service. And we do see that it is inactive. Okay. So while that's off, and then you can just control C out of that. So while that's off, we're still in our CoreOS directory. We're going to type in python 3-m HTTP server. And basically what that does is it hosts these files that are in this folder for us from our host PC internally. Right, so now we're ready to go over to the CoreOS install and begin that process. So what we want to do on the CoreOS side is we want to see what is the name of our hard drive that we're going to be installing this to. So to do that, we're going to type in ls block, press enter on that, and we can see, this is a virtual machine, we can see that VDA is our hard drive, and I've allocated 20 gigs for this test VM. So now we know what the hard drive name is. Let's go ahead and start typing in that command. So it's sudo CoreOS installer install dev VDA -- ignition URL HTTP, and then now we need that IP address from our host machine, right? It's 192.168. Let me go check and see what it was because I don't remember. 122. So 122.243. And that's on port 8000, like I said. And then we want to do slash and the name of our ignition file, right? So the name of this ignition file that it created. So we'll go CoreOS.ignition. Okay, and then after the ignition file, we're going to do -- insecure ignition. And all that's saying is we're using HTTP protocol and not HTTPS, but it's fine. It's all internal network, right? So we're going to let this down. We're going to let this install. Once that's finished, then we can stop the HTTP web service. So no big deal. So we're going to go ahead and press enter. And if I move this window here, you'll see where that the IP address of our CoreOS is this 122.116, and you'll see where it grabbed CoreOS.ignition, HTTP 1.1.200. So it's installing now. You'll see how fast this is. It's already installed, right? So we'll go back over here. We'll do a Control-C on that web server. So we're no longer hosting up those files. And then I'll up arrow a few times and I'll go to this where we've stopped the firewall, and I'll just go back and do start. And then we'll double check with the status and we'll see where that's active again. So firewall was down maybe, I don't know, hopefully you'll watch this through, you'll get your bearings, and then you can do this probably within like 30 seconds, right? So no harm, no foul. So now that that's done, we've got the install finished. Let's go ahead and do a shutdown now. It's going to shut down our VM. And I'm going to go over to the details, and then I want to switch this virtual machine from the CD-ROM, which was our ISO, the CoreOS ISO. We installed it to the virtual disk. So now I want to boot from that virtual disk and not the CD-ROM anymore, that ISO file. And we'll switch back. We'll power it on. Let it boot up. Okay. And what's really cool here is now that we've got the VM stood up, we can SSH into it. And since we gave the config file our SSH RSA tokens, we won't have to log in with a password or anything like that. So if you've got your VM up and running and you know the IP address, what we can do now is from our host machine, we can go SSH and then type in that IP address, 192.168.122.116. But actually we want to use the core at. So SSH user at 192.168.122.116. We're using core. That's the built-in account that comes with CoreOS. So I'm just going to press enter on that. It's going to go out. It's going to see the fingerprint of the SSH key, and it's going to ask me if I want to continue to connect, and I'm going to say yes. Now it's going to remember the token between my host PC and the CoreOS machine. And you notice I didn't have to type in any passwords, right? So it's more secure, and there's no password that you have to remember. And more importantly, there's no password that a potential intruder could compromise. So easier on the user, and it's more secure. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to close this window here with our CoreOS, and we'll do everything from the terminal going forward. So go ahead and go full screen here, see if that's going to adjust, and it does. So now that we've done that, we need to layer in Firewalld, because Firewalld does not come installed by default on CoreOS. So what we can do to do that is just go sudo rpm-ostree install, and we're going to go Firewalld. Press enter on that. We want to do sudo, right? Sudo systemctl reboot. It's not going to prompt me for a password. I don't have a password. So we just do pass it sudo, and it won't prompt you for a password. So now we're just going to wait for that to come back up. You'll notice instead of CoreOS at localhost, I've dropped back down to host PC at Fedora, right? So I'm on that host VM again while we wait for the CoreOS 116 to reboot. It's dropped us back out. So as soon as that's back up, I'll press enter here. I think it's been long enough. Let's try it. Okay. And it did connect back. Notice no password again. So now what I'm going to do here is I need to be able to copy and paste. So how would I do that? I need to go ahead and post this WordPress article so I can copy and paste real fast. So give me just a second here. All right, and we want the Linux IT Guy WordPress. Okay, so instead of having to type all this in, we'll just copy and paste this. If you're following the video, this is actually better anyway, so you just copy and paste all this in instead of having to type it. Plus, it reduces the chance that you'll have a typo. So we're just going to put all these firewall rules in. And these are the rules that Pi-hole requires. We're just basically adding a firewall and then punching holes in 443, 53, 67, TCP and UDP. All right. Okay, what we need to do next is we want to set a static IP. We want to set DNS from the local host to Google, and then stop the systemd service, unlink our DNS from the local, and then we'll restart the network manager. So I'm just going to copy that from the article. I'm going to bring up kwrite, and we want to change a few things. One, you may need to go in and change what network device this is pointing to. In the example, mine is ENP1S0. Yours could be different. So if it is, just come in here and change it in these three spots. Also, you want to change the IP address. So in the example, I just threw in 1.8, 1.1, but it's actually 122 in my virtual environment. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to 122.116, which is the IP address of my CoreOS machine. And we'll change the gateway from 1 to 122. DNS looks good. So now that that's changed, I'm just going to copy that. And once that's changed, I'm going to go ahead and copy this, paste it in, press enter, and you'll see something similar. Connection successfully reapplied to this device, this device, this device. And the network manager was also restarted. That's perfect. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start prepping to run Pi-hole. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these two commands. We're basically creating a volume for Pi-hole and the DNS mask. Paste that in. And the confirmation is it gives you the names back. Next, we'll pull down the image. Just copying and pasting at this point, since we're SSH'd in from the terminal on the host machine. Okay, this next piece, we'll want to copy and put this into Pi-hole as well. There's some things we need to modify. So I'm just using this as like a template here, this kwrite screen. So I'll paste that in. The name of our container will be Pi-hole. The host name's Pi-hole. Network admin, we're not going to change any of this. The time zone could be different for your location. If you're not in the mountain time zone, you'll want to change this. Server IP you'll want to change as well. In the example, like I said, I did 1.8. We want to change that to 122.116. The web password, this is going to be when you finally get Pi-hole running. This is going to be the password that it's going to ask you for to log into that web interface. So for this example, we'll just use test. Change that to something secure. DNS is fine. The conditional forwarding IP needs to change. I want to use the gateway of 122 in my case. Yours may be different. And then the temperatures in Celsius, that's fine. And then here's where it mounts to those two volumes we created earlier. And then here's the ports that it requires that we added to the firewall earlier. So we're ready to go ahead and test this. We'll copy it, paste that in. Press enter. And it takes a few seconds for Pi-hole to launch and get set up. But once that's ready, what we can do now is open a new tab on the host machine. And let's go out to it and see if it's working. 16/admin. And here we go. Here's that portal that we just set the password to. So test, log in. Yeah, save the password, that's fine. And there's our Pi-hole running on CoreOS. We can also see the Podman service running. So let's SSH back in. Let me get the IP address of that. 192.168.122.116. And if we wanted to, we could do sudo podman ps. So now that we've SSH'd into the CoreOS machine, we're going to do a sudo podman ps, and we'll see where our podman container is running with the open ports that we've set and how long it's been running and all that good stuff. The image it's using, the one we defined in our run command. All right, and now we have Pi-hole running from CoreOS. We can close out of that terminal SSH'd into, and it'll continue running. You can see we can go into settings, we can go into dashboard, and it's still working. Hey, if you found this video helpful, here are some others that are packed with informative information. This has been Chris, the Linux IT guy, and I'll see you in the next one.